this is what the movie made me think that's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I've
Yeah, we
seen some
both
pretty bad
agreed.
ones. Yeah.
We didn't bring
So,
enough tissues.
right. So basically what they said was the drug dealers, you can sell one bag of cocaine once, but you can sell a child 5 to 15 times a day for the same amount of money.
Welcome to the Elite Few podcast, where we explore the fabulous, extraordinary world of the people who move the needle of success. Join our host Tiffany and producer Kyle as we dive into the stories and insights of the elite few who are making a difference and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Elite Few podcast. I'm Kyle Goodnight, your co-host and producer. And of course, this is Tiffany Feeney, our host.
Hi, everybody.
One of the things that we're going to be talking about today, this is going to be a little bit different podcast than you've heard, but I promise you this is probably going to be the most important podcast that we will ever do or have ever done to this point. The subject matter today is going to be so profound that everybody needs to know what's really going on in this world. And we have an expert with us. Tiffany, would you like to introduce our expert?
I want to introduce Gina Bohl from Texas. And she has 15 years in human trafficking. I cannot wait for her to share with us her experiences. We, Kyle and I just finished watching Sound of Freedom. And oh my gosh, I mean, we all know, I mean, if you're a human and you're breathing, you know how bad human trafficking is. If you do not know and you are unaware and you've been living in a cave or you just keep yourself sheltered or just like to close your ears, eyes, and mouth and pretend that you can walk through like an ostrich through life, that's great. But go see the movie because it is a lot of awareness.
Yes.
So I think there were several parts in the movie that really shook both of us. I know that Gina has seen him speak at many events. Kyle has already watched the podcast that he's doing. I think there were several things in the movie that really shook me, and that was the cartel guy that had been with that hooker. Right. Yeah.
Well, real quick, Gina, can you tell us about yourself and just, real quick about who you are and what you do and how you tie in and why we brought you on as an expert in this field right now?
Sure. Expert. Wow. I am, that's a heavy title, but, well, I've known Tiffany since I was, 14 years old. And so we go way back, but a little bit about me. I'm a mom, have 4 kids, have been married to an amazing man for 25 years. Tiffany was there at my wedding and when our oldest son was born. And I'm, like you said, I'm in Texas now, but got started in anti-human trafficking about 15 years ago.
So what got you into that? What started you going, hey, I just want to start, freeing people from human trafficking? What, because you now educate, but at one point you were seriously involved with the ugly.
My husband and I did a video, but not that kind of video.
Yeah, I get it.
I do everything based on my kids' ages. So, don't even think that our 3rd child had been born yet. And
no, she had not, because you didn't know
she
you were
is
going to have her.
number 4, but he, number 3, had not been born yet either. Tiffany,
she's my favorite. In case anybody needs to know.
Yes, Tiffany prophesied that I was going to have a daughter when I was like, I'm done having kids.
No, I think the exact words were Toby said, "Stop saying we're having another kid. I'm not kidding." And I said, no, you have 2 daughters and 2 sons, and you're telling me you only have 3 kids. Yes. And Gina goes, yes, that's true. And she names Chase and Hudson and London. And I said, nope, there's another one. And she goes, well, I have news for you, Tiffany. When I go home, I'm getting an IUD. She's 14.
She's 13. She just turned 13.
Okay. Yeah. Just to let you know.
Yeah. Just
but if I see that you're pregnant, you're having a baby.
Yeah. Well, don't see that because right now.
No. Dear God.
No. But So I think I was pregnant with baby 3, whose name is Hudson. He's 16 now. And some friends of ours approached us and said, "Hey, do you know who Nick and Chris Kane are that run A21?" And Toby and I were like, "Well, yeah, of course." And they were like, "Great. They're really wanting to get the word out more about what they're doing. Can you guys write, produce, and direct just like a bumper video and something that can really pull on the heartstrings to get people aware of human trafficking?" And we were like, sure. At that time, literally all I had to go on was the UN like definition of human trafficking and all of their laws, which was like a book about this thick. So I just started reading through it because thought, if we're going to do this video, I got to know like what we're getting into. And the more I started reading it with all the legal jargon and stuff, I just was like, wow, if you're a victim that's brought over to the United States from a foreign country, you have a lot of resources handed to you. But if you are a victim within the United States, you are actually not a victim at that point. You're a prostitute, or you're out on the street, and that's who you are. And there's not a lot of things that are available to you. And so just in making these videos and like starting out and doing that is really kind of what opened the door for the idea and the knowledge of it. And I remember thinking, I would love to get involved with this. And I thought that it was just going to be through media and through production, because that's what my husband's background is in, is media production. And
and you guys own a media production company.
Yes, we do.
For a living, yeah.
For a living, yes. I'm more on the creative side. He's the technical person, and so it worked out well because I was able to write and come up with what things were going to look like, and then, he took it from there. And so we did this. And the funny thing is I know it was given to them. I know they showed it. I know they played it. I never saw it played because I was always out doing something else whenever, these videos were being shown. But it wasn't until probably a year later, I think, Hudson had been born. He was about a year old. And somebody had said, "Hey, can you do another video?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Would love to." And there's some transition that was going on, with work. And I was trying to figure out, do I want to continue to work and mom 3 kids? What do I want to do? And really, the Lord just opened up a door for me to step through into an organization there in Louisiana where we were living at the time, to become their public awareness coordinator. And I thought it was going to be all media, and we were going to do billboards, and we were going to get awareness out there, and we were going to have this amazing grant that we were going to work with. And when I said, "Yeah, I would love to do that," they were like, "Great, tomorrow is your first meeting with the task force." And I went, "I'm sorry, what?"
Right. Yeah, that's a little bit more of a serious word, task force.
Yeah, I was like,
because those are the ones that are busting in places to get people.
I was like,
she did.
I just kind of want to like create billboards and talk to the press.
I don't want to get my hands dirty. I think I went in the wrong door. I think. Yeah.
I think I kind of just want to.
And what year was that?
This was 2004. Wait, Hudson was born in 2007. So this was 2007.
Okay, 2007. So that was still a few years before the events of the movie Sound of Freedom.
Oh, yeah,
because what I learned today, listened to a podcast with Tim on it, was that it was 2013, 14-ish when all that stuff went down. And one of the things that they said in the podcast, or maybe it was on the movie, that there was 5,000% increase in human trafficking at some point in time, and it's only getting bigger, right? Can you speak on numbers at all? Like, let's talk about numbers.
Sure, I have my cheat sheet here because it's a lot of numbers, and
it's and we all, trust me when I tell you, folks, the numbers that you think you have in your head right now are way low, even if you're talking about millions.
Yes, and the thing too that I want people to understand is like my background. So when it comes to anti-trafficking, there's the international side, which Tim did a lot of. And then there's the
Correct.
domestic. And so my heart has always been domestic. I've never done anything
Okay.
international. Everything that I've done and I've worked in is here in the United States, like in the lower 48 United States. That's where I have done stuff. And to break it down even more, it's only been in Texas and Louisiana. You know, those are my two, that's my bubble and that's my world. And so seeing like what we saw in these states, it's happening everywhere. So some of the let me pull up my statistics here really quick that I had down, is that you can another really great resource too, and that people can tag onto, is the Polaris Project. Is an amazing resource for all of these numbers, for all of this stuff. They've got my resources here. They also have a really great where you can call and you can report anonymously, and you can send in text for what it is that you're seeing. Because our whole thing is like, if you see something, say something.
Right. And we'll put that information, we'll get that from you. We'll put that information below.
Perfect. So in the current year that we are at, Polaris Project has handled the top types of trafficking is escort services. Okay. And I can speak a little bit to personally seeing what that looks like. Obviously, pornography is a big one, which a lot of people don't tie pornography to that. They were looking at just here in the United States for escort services and victims of sex trafficking. We're looking at about 10,836 just to current from just this year, from January to this year. And that's just in my state, here in the state of
that's
Texas.
Your state.
That doesn't
Your
include, yes. So when you go to Polaris, you can pull up your state and you can find out, like in your state, where you are and where you rank. There are currently right now, don't quote me,
because we can add that, Kyle, right? We can add that website.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll be able to add that. And one of the things that I heard today was that someone thought it was, a couple of million. Mm-hmm. They know of 6 million are actually like worldwide. And actually probably more like 12 million.
Yeah, I think 12 million is probably the closer count to it worldwide.
12 million. 12
and
million.
You have to look at that too, because, sex trafficking and labor trafficking both, and being in Louisiana, I caught cases that were both labor and that were sex trafficking. Here in Texas, I only dealt with, the sex trafficking issues that were here. But if you combine both of those, I feel like you're probably going to be worldwide over the 12 million mark if you're combining sex and labor trafficking together. And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially over in maybe a third world country, your labor trafficking does bleed into that sex trafficking part of things as well.
Right. I would like to also have you highlight so many people. I mean, people I talk to every day do not understand the amount of people that are stolen in this country, because when it's a runaway that is stolen, they do not report it, mark it, talk about it on the news. There's no coverage, nothing. People don't realize it's thousands upon thousands in every state that are taken. Yes. And can you highlight that and get into that a little bit for them?
So there are several different ways that people can get caught up in sex trafficking. When I was living in Louisiana, familial trafficking was one of those things, and it's very unfortunate, but it's where family members traffic other family members, and usually those other family members are children. And it is based on usually drug use. So somebody in the family is pimping out a child in order to support a drug or alcohol habit. And so there was a lot of family trafficking. But also runaways play a part in it. And let's just be honest, our foster care system is incredibly broken. And so a lot of traffic victims come through the foster care system. And
that will be coming up. We will be doing an episode on that soon. Yes.
So speaking to family trafficking, and in Louisiana especially, one of the things that we really try to do is to work with the public schools there to say, hey, rather than call somebody at the end of the day to say that your child was truant or was absent or didn't show up when they were supposed to, or they missed a class, those phone calls need to be made as soon as attendance is handed in, and you're immediately calling, and then you're
And they're
keeping a,
not.
well, they changed it to where I don't know about, I mean, here in Texas, yes, my kids, they miss something. I don't get a phone call till the evening, but there in Baton Rouge, in the Baton Rouge area, in the 225 area is what we call it, we were able to get schools on board to begin starting those truancy phone calls like immediately to say, hey, your kid's not in school, your kid's not in school, and then really encouraging the teachers and the administration to step in and to really keep track of who isn't here, because that is a red flag. Like, are they missing multiple classes multiple times? So you have your family trafficking. A lot of times people think that also human trafficking is this white creepy 1980s van driving down the road just snatching kids up off the street, and it's not like that. It is more grooming that is taking place. So here in Texas, especially where I am, there's an area that is very heavily gang populated, and grooming is a huge thing in that area. So
What is it? Rooming?
grooming, like they're
Grooming.
grooming
Oh,
their victims.
yeah. They're okay.
They'll groom an entire, like, traffickers will groom an entire community, and you're like, how does that happen? And it's like, well, let's take these communities where they don't have a lot of resources. Maybe they're more of a food desert. Kids are not getting their daily needs met, just simple daily basic needs of like food, shelter, clothing, love, and attention, right? And so a trafficker will come in and they'll start providing things. Here's a bag of McDonald's to like the entire street. Here's some clothes. Here's this, here's that. And so they're taking care of the entire neighborhood, but they're honing in on just that one person. So by the time that the nanas who are watching out their mini blinds and don't like anybody that's on their street, they're seeing that they're taking care of all the people. They're almost being blinded to the fact that this one or two particular kiddos are being paid extra special attention to. And so then by that time, the community has been groomed to accept this person as a really good person.
And when somebody questions it and says, why is that guy talking to that 10-year-old? No, he's part of the community. He helps people.
Yes.
And then they can just bring them right in and say, yeah, we have this clubhouse. No, and then the kids probably don't realize they're being sex trafficked, even while it's happening.
Right. Most victims don't even realize that they are being sex trafficked. Right. So you have that grooming there. A real pivotal point, I know for me, was we lived through Hurricane Katrina. And when those levees broke and New Orleans went underwater, Baton Rouge grew by hundreds of thousands of people overnight. Right. And we were part of those relief efforts for everybody that was coming in from New Orleans. And one of the things that had been found out and that we were told is that when families were separated during that time, people had posed as FEMA workers and were going in and telling family members, we found your family in Houston, we found your family in Florida. They were being split up on that I-10, I-12 corridor, and I've driven that, and you can, as long as you're under the speed limit, you're not going to see a cop for miles and miles and miles. So it's easy to transport, and they weren't there. They were just being trafficked across state lines at that point.
Well, and that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something else that it was, I'll admit that I've, even with some training in the past for my profession, it's been one of those things where recently there's more and more like really detailed stuff like that. So natural disasters is a natural place that sex traffickers know to go and get, because people are families are split apart. Maybe even like in third world countries, like when we had those earthquakes, they flocked to that area. The sex traffickers, the kingpins, if you will, flocked to that area because there were actual kids that had parents dying, that they would just snatch them up crying over their dead parents in the streets. So, or wandering, so those are when numbers go up tremendously, because they target those downticks in natural or natural disasters, and they know, and they're groomed to do that.
Exactly. So. And the thing too is like, in sitting and like actually talking with traffickers, They're smart. And I've had one tell me,
Well, you did. Let's point out that when you say talking, you actually would have a way. You searched out who was being trafficked. You would give them a card, right, and say, "I like your hair." Like, I want to get into that too, because you actually
Sure.
did do that. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, traffickers are smart. There were some that were like busted, and they're like, "Why are you busting me?" And it's like, because weirdo, you tattooed your name on like 12 girls. Like, how do we not know that you weren't this person, And
Yeah.
so one of the lanes that I ran in was victim identification, and one of the ways that we did that is that it was through research and saying, where are the homeless shelters in our area, where is the long corridor where all of the games are being played, and where the sports teams are, whether they're college or professional. Where do those motels that are paid by the hour, where is that strip, where do those places operate? And then finding out where, especially here in Texas, where was the gang controlled. And stop 6 is the area where people are like, I can't believe you went down there. And I'm like, when you have the grace and the call on you to do that, it's like you're not an idiot. Like, I didn't go down there unprotected, and I wasn't in those areas just rogue. And we can get into that a little bit too, about wisdom with that. But one of the things that we did was, one, and it sounds so weird, but it was developing a relationship with those motel owners, where on Fridays during the day, going down for months at a time and just saying, hey, we want to help families that might show up here that could possibly be homeless. Is it okay if I come back tonight and Saturday night and offer food or things like that to them? And at first, some of them were like, no, you can't. But then others were like, yeah, that's fine. And they would tell me where actually legitimate families were living. And so one of the things that we did is we would just load up, and we took donations of peanut butter and jelly and bread and powdered milk. And, we kept diapers in the back of the vehicle. And me and the team members would go to these motels, and we would just knock on the door and say, hi, we're here with an outreach. We didn't say we were with the church, because we weren't, but we also didn't say that we were an anti-trafficking organization, because we were, but we not. And we have free groceries. Does anybody want them? And getting them to open the door is that first step, because if you can give me 15, 20 seconds to put my eyes in that room, to scan it, to see, I can say, okay, family that definitely needs this. But more times than not, the door would open, and there would be a girl sitting on the bed, or 2 or 3 girls sitting on a bed that looked underage, and there would be a couple of guys in those rooms. And so giving them the groceries, but also saying, oh, I see you have some girls, would you ladies like some toiletries? And within that was the card that says, we offer free haircuts. If you would like help, please call. Or if you need food assistance, please call. And it's that hotline number that they were able to call. But then walking out, I was connected with another group who I was able to take pictures of the cars, the license plates, and immediately upload descriptions of what hotel, motel I was at, what the perpetrator looked like, and what the girls looked like, and get that directly to law enforcement.
And then they would do that, and you would actually also go in with them for the sting.
So I would wait, but I didn't go in, just because like I know what my lane is, and so I was like, don't give me a gun, because I'm probably going to shoot.
Amen. I said that to you. I'm like, why are these people walking out of the room? We talked about that before, and you had to pray about it for a moment, because
it does something to you. But also at the same time, the craziest thing that ever happened is that I went to a regular motel that we would go to every single Friday night. I mean, without fail. And the drug dealers ran the corner room at this motel. Like, they ran it, and the lead guy, like, he knew what we were doing. He knew what I was doing. He saw me putting in the information, and I just thought, dear Lord, one day he's going to be like, you're ratting on me, and I'm going to, but he actually, when I would show up, he'd like, hey, come here. come here, church lady. And I'm like, I'm not with the church. He's like, whatever. He's like, come here. I'm like, what? He's like, that room over there. I saw him go in. So the drug dealers literally started telling me like what room the traffickers were in. And I was like,
Well,
this
because
is
they were in
Well,
their
and
lane, right? Like
insidious.
they were in
thing
their
is,
lane. Yeah, I love that. They were like,
so
I want to sell drugs, but I certainly don't want to rape kids. Yeah,
Right.
bastard over there. Yeah, I get it.
well, and
Yeah.
remember what did they say in that movie? And back in the Sound of Freedom movie, they
Yeah.
said that this is worse than drug epidemic. This is
Yeah.
worse. Now,
Yeah.
now we know we've been saying no to drugs and all of the millions and billions of dollars that come into this country on drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
The reason why they said this, and this, I mean,
Oh,
Tiffany and I, we get chills just thinking about it. And I'm going to say it out
go
loud.
ahead,
What they said
because
in the
that was the
movie
worst
was
line of the movie.
it was
I
it
know
was
what
the
you're gonna
bone
say.
chilling.
Yeah.
This is what the movie made me think that that's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I've
Yeah,
seen
we
some
both
pretty bad.
agreed. It was
Yeah.
we didn't bring
So
enough tissues.
right. So basically, what they said was the drug dealers are basically you can sell one bag of cocaine once, but you can sell a child 5 to 15 times a day for the same
Yes.
amount of money.
Yes.
And they
that's
said for
A day
10 years.
Yeah.
for
For
10 years.
yes. And that's the thing when in talking with these traffickers is it's like they told me that if they felt like somebody was going to bring them money, they were willing to invest, and it would if they had to groom for 6 months, they were okay with that because they knew that they were going to make all that money back
If
on that
what was going to
person.
happen in 6
If
months?
if it took them 6 months to groom somebody and to get them into where they were pliable and where they could traffic them, they were willing to invest 6 months because they knew that their return on the investment was going to be worth it. So they were willing to wait it out and to do what they needed to do if they felt like this person was going to make them enough money.
Evils come in different ways, and people want to give the cartel a really bad lip all the time, but that guy was a cartel dealer, and he was part of the cartel. He went to prison. He's in the movie, and Kyle and I talked about this. I think I mentioned it to you beforehand, and he said he came out of prison. He went back doing his same thing, right? Hookers, selling drugs, no big deal. And the hooker came in, and when he was done, he looked down at her toes, and there were kittens on her toes. And he said he realized she was not 24. And he looked her in the eyes, and he found out she had been doing this since she was 6 and she was only 14. And he said it was like something in her soul connected, and he was going to kill himself. Right, Kyle?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Tell
he
her
said
he was going to
he's
put the gun. Go ahead,
so
Kyle.
basically this is in the movie, and
Yeah.
I mean, spoiler alert, but he says, and he gets, and it's probably one of the most bone chilling scenes.
It's
And
horrible.
he says, "Listen, I was ready to kill myself because I am not that kind of guy." He goes,
Drug
then,
dealer, but not a pedophile.
Right.
Yeah.
He goes, so right when I started pulling the trigger, he said, God spoke to me, and when God speaks to you, you do what he says, period.
Right.
So he didn't kill himself, and then he went in that Columbia area and started buying. I guess he had to have posed as a buyer.
Yeah.
And then buy lots of girls, and then get them off the street, but then put them someplace well.
Well, the hard part with the halfway houses, and Gina knows about this because I'm sure I know for a fact she knows about it. Not all the halfway houses, the people who run them don't even know what's going on. They are sometimes using them as a way to funnel. They get caught, they get released, put them in a halfway house, and they're being used to funnel them back into sex trafficking. The people running it don't know the safe houses, that because nobody can know where they're going after they leave. So nobody knows what's going on. It's horrible.
So here's a question for you, and this is I guess where it could get a little not controversial, but that many would argue to truly address human trafficking, we focus on demand and not so what do you guys like? Are they also trying to crack down on the demand, like the people that are actually doing the buying at the end, the Johns, I guess, if you will?
Sure. In certain states, yes. And so, and this is what I've told people before that get into this. human trafficking is this really big highway. I mean, it's bigger than anything you've ever driven in LA or in Texas, where we've got 8 lanes across on both sides. It is this massive highway, but you have to pick the lane and choose the lane that you want to be in order to help, combat this. We need people in the lanes of social justice because in some states, yes, there are John laws where they are being prosecuted, but in a lot of times, it is fines that is happening. Because another thing too is to understand is that human trafficking isn't just children. There
Correct.
are also women and even men that
You're right.
are that
Yes.
get roped
Yeah.
into this,
Absolutely.
And so I think for a lot of people, sometimes they're like, and that's where the issue comes in is like, I'm going to.
And they're not model. They're not model looking people. These are normal, overweight, regular people. Yeah, these
because
women.
they're also trafficked for jobs, where they get blackmailed from their employer, giving them special treatment and be like, well, you owe me another 2 months because I put you up in this house. And then they just always find the one next thing to put them down.
And so when it comes to labor trafficking and forced servitude, I feel like, and I'm not a legal expert on that side, that's a little bit easier to prove. That you have forced somebody into forced servitude, you have removed their passports from them, you've kept them there, They have lived in horrible living conditions, you haven't paid them, you've coerced them to stay. And so the penalties on that are, it's easier. That is more of it's just an easier thing to identify. When it comes to sex trafficking, it's like, yes, for children, we know that whatever state you're in, whatever state says at this age, they are not able to even consent to sex, then we know that is automatically sex trafficking. Like they weren't able to consent with sex with this person. So they were either statutory rape or you trafficked them to somebody else like that. Whenever you hit that time when they start to age out of that and they turn 18, 19, 20 years old and they're still being trafficked, and that's where, for whatever reason, the waters get muddy because it's like it turns into, well, they're prostitutes. And it's like, I mean, sure, some of them do turn to prostitution because all they've known, like if all you know to do is paint a house when you're, from the age 6 to 18, then when you turn 19, all you're going to know to do is to paint a house in order to survive. And so it is a little bit harder to define that. And the thing that we've got to get away from is prosecuting the people that are trafficked. Because it used to be back in the day, you would pick up a girl who was being trafficked and you would charge her with prostitution, thinking in the goodness and kindness of police departments' hearts, I'm getting her off the street. I'm getting her away from her pimp for the night. I'm giving her a place to stay and where she's not going to be beat and she doesn't have to do this. Not realizing that you're removing her livelihood from her and she's going to have to make up twice that amount and probably be beat in the meantime because, they want to know what did you say. And remembering too that people do not self-identify as human traffic victims. They really don't. Like a victim is not going to sit there and be like, I am a traffic victim. I mean, and so speaking to your safe house, Tiffany, not only do people like, there's so much that's involved in safe houses because I did help open one. You have to have medical doctors there to detox from the drugs because a lot of them have been forcibly, put on drugs or they just start taking it because there's no other way to cope. You have to have the psychologist and psychiatrist there to deal with the mental and emotional trauma that's there. There are sometimes it's a domestic abuse issue because it is a partner that's actually trafficking that person. And so you've got all of that nasty mix up that's mixed and meshed in with it. And then you also have to have like the rehabilitation side and what I call the re-entry into society, where they have to learn how to re-enter society as what we would say is a normal person, but somebody that has a job and has a degree and is able to, function and operate. And so the safe houses have to have all those things. And that's why there's not a lot of them here in the United States.
Right. And that's what really, a couple things that was even said in the end of the movie. And because the actor comes out and talks about some really specifics about, when it kind of just a flashback to your freeway analogy, you know, you said it's a really wide lane and you've got your lane. Well, some of the lanes that are doing things as well, they don't have enough people. There's not enough cars in that lane to deal with it.
Right.
Like our drug force right now, 5 to 1, 5 drug force agents to 1 human traffic agent. It's not enough. It needs to be
Mm-mm.
flip-flopped. It
Yeah.
Yeah,
needs to
it
be
does. Yeah.
and but also too, it's a heavy toll. I mean, I can't imagine. I hope you have a good therapist, because the stuff you see, you better be able to.
Well,
Well, I know God's your
Gina did.
therapist, but
How,
you
Yeah.
know,
Gina, you saw a lot that shook you really
Sure.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
And
were involved with what this when they did the stings. You're watching them bring out these children that were being raped when they broke in.
yeah, and the thing that you have to remember in all of the situations, like, is that it is overwhelming if you try to fix all of it. You know, it is just,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. And understanding too, I think having a this idea of knowing it's never all going to go away until Jesus comes back, because we live in a fallen world. But we can, in the moment, with the time that we have, do what we can to help who we can. It's that starfish mentality. It's the little boy walking on the beach, picking up the starfish and throwing them back in. And the old man saying, "Look at all these starfish. What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm saving this one's life." And he's like, "But you can't save all of them." And he's like, "But I can save this one." And he throws it back into the ocean. And so it is finding that lane and being in it. You know, for a lot of people, they're going to see this movie, or they've already seen this movie. And so they immediately go to that rescue. And that's great, but we're not all Liam Neeson with a very special set of skills.
No.
You know,
No.
a
we're
very
not Tim.
special set of skills.
That's
And
right.
we're not
And
and we're not Tim
we're not
Ballard.
Tim
No.
Ballard. You know, we're not, and we're not those
Yeah.
people. You know, rescue is
Right.
not the thing. So if that's not it, then what is it? Can you do nonprofit work? Can
That
you
was
write
actually going to be my
grants?
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Can
was
you
actually
write
going to be my next
grants?
question. Right. So my next question was going to be, you know, for our listeners who are sitting here feeling hopeless. Now, Tiffany and I, we agreed we weren't going to do this show for another 2 or 3 weeks, but we saw the movie. We left the movie. We looked at each other and I said, "You know when we have to do this, right?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's got to be launched next.
Now
Like it's got to be launched
we're
next."
bumping the next
So
show
yeah,
and putting this out Monday.
because one of the things that was really profound at the end of that movie was the fact that the lead actor asked everybody, tell people. That's the way we start to get people out there. This is the same thing that happened back in when Lincoln freed the slaves. They had people that told stories, that got the word out, that got the movement. He wants this to be a movement. He wants this to be our version of freedom of slavery, because right now, another thing that was divulged last night in the movie is that we have more slavery right now in this world than we ever did back then when it was legal. There's
When
more.
slavery was legal, yeah.
Right. So what can you tell our listeners, or people that don't know how to help and don't know what to do? Tiffany and I are able to bring this information to the world because we put it on the web and we have the technology and stuff like that. So that's how we're trying to help. That's our little lane. Of course, in my profession, I do see I'm a paramedic, and we've had training, and if we see clues, we can turn to people and ask for help and get them pulled aside and ask if they're safe. And we've had a few times where we've thought maybe this was a trafficking thing, so we would turn the situation over to the law enforcement. So there are some small things that are not as big as what you're doing, but that's all I know how to do. That's all I know how to get involved with in bringing this information. People that are listening right now may have zero ability to do what you do or want to do it, but what could they do to help? Like, what do you tell your community when they feel like their hands are tied?
I love that question. And so here's what I tell everybody is, it's like, what are you passionate about? And I'm not talking the overall broad speak of human trafficking. Like, do you love to cook? If you are passionate about cooking and you love to cook, find a home that houses these girls and say, I want to volunteer one day a month to come in and cook for them. I want to teach a cooking class. Do you like to write grants? Find a nonprofit and be like, I want to find a grant for you that I can help do. If you are legal minded and you're in the law and the justice side of things, for the love of God, please do everything you can to get in front of senators and to start meeting with people that are passionate about this, to change and to rewrite these laws of how we prosecute the Johns, how we prosecute the traffickers, and how we're getting services to victims. Some of you may be on here and, maybe like me, like I'm just a mom and I don't know what else to do. Can you pray? That is the biggest thing. Can you pray? Can you find an organization and just pray for them? And, call them up. Graphic designers, like, look, I've been a nonprofit for a long time. We are not graphic designers. Okay. Our flyers look like we did the 1990s clip art. We need people that can create websites and brochures and flyers and help us design things to get the message out. So volunteer your time to do that, to get that message out. If you're a businessman and you're like, I just want to fund something, bring on the money, like find somebody, give them the money. Event planners, if you love to fundraise and do events, then tell a nonprofit that's in your area. Google anti-trafficking nonprofits. You will find 5, 6, 7, 8 in your area. I can promise you. Get with them and say, how can I help? Can I do an event for you? Can I do a bake sale? Anything like that. So find your passion and then just really dig in and say, Lord, how is it that I can take what I'm passionate about to give back into this and to help this? Because it takes every single person to be in that lane and to just drive that car and to get it down the interstate.
So Gina, I want to get into, before we even wrap things up, I really want to talk about what people can watch out for their kids, for their grandkids. My girlfriend just recently was at Columbus, Ohio, Polaris Mall. Her son was there with their baby in a stroller. And this is what people do. I've actually heard other people see this happen to themselves or their friends' kids. And this woman had been taking pictures and walked past him. He saw his son's face on the camera. He started yelling at her. She ran, called his wife, said, meet me at the door, gave her the baby, and ran back in. She was gone. They called the police. The problem is, this is right here in the middle of Columbus, Ohio, at a mall. And people don't understand that they are shopping. That woman had that baby on a bidding site. Besides that, there's other things. Can you bring some awareness to this? Tell people what they need to be watching for, looking for, and what they can do to prevent this from happening to the people in their lives, because people are not aware how common this is for regular suburban Polaris. This area is money. You've got Dublin, Olentangy, Westerville. I mean, this is money. This isn't a poor area. They're not stealing people who are neglecting their kids. This is an area with money.
Sure.
My girlfriend had it happen to her at a Publix in Florida with her kid. These aren't poor places. So what can you say to these people, what to watch for, and not to be ignorant and think that you're ever in a safe place?
Sure. One thing to understand is that knowledge is power. So if you're listening, don't let this freak you out and scare you and say you're going to lock the doors. Look, I've got 2 boys. I've got 2 girls. Our kids have freedom because I am aware and I do know. And I've had people say all the time, how can you let your kids even out of the house, knowing what you know, seeing what you saw? And I'm like, because they know and I know, and, we don't live in fear. But we do live in wisdom. And so one is understanding that human trafficking is humans, and there are the vulnerable population that are very susceptible to it, from your runaways to, like I said, the kids that aren't getting their needs met, to even single moms who are really struggling. But it also, I've seen girls that are college students, sorority sisters driving Bentleys that have been trafficked before too. And so one thing to keep in mind is social media. Parents who may not want to hear this, get your kids off freaking social media. Just do it. Like, you will not ruin their life if they do not have social media. Our youngest son is 16 and he just was allowed to get to get Instagram for his 16th birthday, and his account is tied to mine. So I see everything that's happening on that. And I don't necessarily have to always check up on it because he knows that mom and dad are watching. Our 13-year-old has 0 social media. you can give them a smartphone and you do not have to give them social media. One is not the other. So just keep that in mind. Like, yes, we live in a day and age where we do want our kids to stay in touch with us. Research other options besides an iPhone and an Android if you want your kids to stay in touch with you. So be aware of what they're tuned into on social media. You need to be friends with their friends as much as you don't want to be that. Phone checks. Like, I cannot tell you how often this device here is tied directly to trafficking. It just is, from Snapchat to Instagram to Twitter to the private messages on other sites. This thing right here is going to be the biggest human trafficker that's out there, because people can get to kids through this. So keeping their devices on lockdown, being the parent and saying, no, you're not getting that social media account. No, you don't get Snapchat. No, you don't get TikTok. I'm sorry, you got to put your phone up in my room at 9 o'clock at night, like, until you're going to pay that phone bill, I control what comes in and what you get to see.
So I want to address this too, because I taught for 6 years. I did substitute teaching. I taught in Title I schools. I taught in schools for kids that were expelled from their regular schools. I can't tell you how many kids whose parents thought they didn't have social media, they had a phone their parents didn't know about. They had a phone their parents gave them, and they bought another phone and lied. And I do believe, and I know just from my girlfriend whose son has girls come over all the time, and she's like, oh no, my parents don't know I have this. We're not allowed to have Facebook, so I have an account they don't know I have. Okay, now we have a problem. So I think there is a part of, hey, I don't want you lying to me. I want to be aware and watch. Here is why. And it's not that I don't trust you, but your desire to get in trouble and to do things behind my back can get you kidnapped.
Right.
And you think that. And I remember my friend just telling me a story where the father said to my friend, I don't think you understand. My children don't have social media, either does my wife. Our family doesn't do that. And we're very watchful. And our children don't hang out with anyone that they don't go to church with. And my friend was like, okay. Because she knew everything he was saying, that he was completely unaware of his family. His wife had a social media because she's on the neighborhood apps and the Facebook apps on the neighborhood stuff. His daughter is on Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram. I mean, like, and she's like, what the heck? Like, this guy had no clue. Either he's lying to her or lying to himself, but he seemed pretty convinced. And I think we need to address that. What parents need to, there needs to be a way that you can tell your kids, listen, I mean, right now, if Willow says to you, I want this, Mom, and I'm going to get it, or she's not even going to be that. She would never just come right out. She'd just do it, and not tell you. What can you do as a parent to safeguard your kids when you know there's a chance they could just be lying and you can't watch them to keep them safe?
Right, you can't watch them. So here's the thing, is that social media is never going to go away, but there is you as a parent get to control when they get that. So, and that's going to be based individually on every kid, because every kid is different,
or tell them to be honest with you for a good reason, because they can lie to you and get it without your permission.
Sure. And it's also, though, making sure that when you allow them to have it, that they know that there's very clear social media boundaries that are there. Like, they sign a contract with us that says you're not going to DM people that you don't know, and you're going to keep your account set on private, and making sure that your kids know, just like ours, do. Our two older ones, obviously we don't monitor that anymore. But where it is one of those things of like, I'm going to do a phone check. I'm going to look and see who you're texting and what's being said and pictures. And if I find out that you've deleted stuff, then we're going to have an issue, and we're going to talk about it. So it's that. And it's also giving them the why. Like, you got to talk to your kids about the why. So one, as a parent, you're allowed to say no. And you can tell, like, we've told our youngest no, like, right. 13-year-old girls, like, first of all, I think should just not even be on social media at all, just for their own mental health, but I know her, and I know she couldn't handle it right now. She just can't. Like, it would consume everything, and it would, there would be body image issues that would come into play. Like, like, you just know your child. And so it's like, I'm sorry, I know your friends have this, but I love you. You can look at my stuff. You can look at your sister's stuff that is on there. And if you feel like you need to talk to a friend through Instagram, even though you have their phone number, then you can use my Instagram account to do that. So giving them that, but also explaining, the why. Like, I love you right now. First of all, it says if you're under the age of 13 or 14, you're not allowed to have that anyways. That's always a good one. But it's also saying there are people that are out there that think that they know you or are going to tell you that you're beautiful, you're amazing, and you're all these things, and you don't know them, and they're going to want to talk to you. And I'm telling you that that is not a safe situation to be in. And if you really feel like you want to meet this person, if you really feel like you like this person, if you really feel like, they're going to be your friend, then let us know so that way we can meet them with you. And allow that space to be there, but have those boundaries. And a lot of times too, if you tell, you're like, that's great. If you met this person online and they want to meet you, ask them where, and then let them know my mom and dad will have me there at this time. And normally that shuts the conversation completely down because the other person is like, oh shoot, that's not for me. So it's being aware. It's just making sure your kids are that they just know. I mean, without telling them, hey, there's people that take kids and they rape them and they sell them over and over, and it happens, 100 times a day. We want you to be safe and we love you. So no, I'm not dropping you off at the mall by yourself, even though that's what we did in the 80s and 90s with nothing but
we didn't know. We didn't know.
It was like, Dad, I'm done. I'm calling you from a payphone. Come pick me up.
But human trafficking wasn't where it is now in the 80s.
No, we just had to watch for the creepy ice cream vans.
Well, here's the thing. You were at the mall. Kyle, you remember Officer Reardon worked at the mall all the time. He knew every single kid at that mall, where they were going, what they were doing. He'd stand out back. You want a cigarette? Yeah, I'll have a cigarette with you. And they would tell him everything that was going on in the city. He knew. That's why he ended up being chief of police. I'm sure of it. He knew every person. And if somebody was talking to a kid, I don't know how many times I watched him walk up to somebody and be like, you need to leave. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was watching the arcade. He was watching the movie theater. He was watching everything. And when it was different, the towns were smaller back then.
Yeah.
Life was smaller. It wasn't like now. You go to the mall, your parents don't know that cop. They're not in Sunday school with that cop. They're not going to baseball picnics with them. It's not like it used to be.
It's not. And we can't raise our kids like we were raised either.
Right.
No.
So, and it's weird because like Gen Xers, like we can't raise our kids even like how we were in the early 2000s before social media even happened. I mean, our kids are growing up with social media. We were introduced to it.
And we watched out for each other.
Yes.
We watched out for each other. Yeah.
Right. But it's making sure you're having these honest conversations. Also, parents, if your kids go to a school where there is an organization that's going to come in and talk about, I don't even know what to call it, body awareness, or like what we call it here. We have a program where it's called Safe Touch, Confusing Touch, and Unsafe Touch, where it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then just normal, like what's a normal hug? Let your kids be in those classes. Right now, where we're at, our district in the state of Texas, even everybody is being given the option to opt out of those, to opt in. And so a lot of parents forget to sign those papers. And so these kids aren't getting that education. If you think that that a program like that is presented to you, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, whoever, caregivers of all the children, and you are like, this is sex education and this is gender identity, I'm going to encourage you, before you say, no, my child is not going to participate in that, take advantage of the preview nights that they offer, watch the curriculum, read through the curriculum, and then base your decision on that. Because that prevention side of thing is huge in helping to prevent human trafficking. Because what it does is it gives kids the ability and the opportunity to say, that I don't want you to do that to my body. I don't like that. I'm allowed to tell an adult no. Not only that, I've been empowered to go tell a trusted adult what is happening to me if somebody has said something that's inappropriate or has touched me in an inappropriate way. And so now we're giving the kids their voices back, and we're saying you're allowed to tell an adult no. So if parents, you have a program like that that comes to your schools, let your kids see it. Let them listen to it. Let them be a part of it, because that prevention is going to be a huge stop in trafficking in the future, because kids aren't going to be coerced into doing something that they don't want to do. So that's another big thing that parents can do as well.
It's that old adage, knowledge is power. So
Yes.
real quick before we wrap up here, we got a couple of minutes left.
Wait a minute. I do want to touch on her at telling people how widespread that baby picturing thing. It didn't just happen in our mall. It's happening across the nation. And I want her to talk about that. I've talked to 3 people recently who said, that's really rare. It's not.
It's not. Yeah, I have a friend here where it happened, to her as well, and they even followed her out of the parking lot, too. And so it is happening. And so, of course, when your kiddos are that age, it's being very aware of the surroundings around you. It's making sure that you're aware of the people around you. And as a parent, I mean, it's just using that voice to say, don't do that. And again, even if a parent doesn't realize it, that you're there and you recognize it, it's stepping up and saying something for that person, and saying, hey, I don't like that. Letting, the store managers know, or security officers know, like, what you've seen, what you've observed. Again, if you see something, say something. I know we adopted it after 9/11, but it needs to be across the board when it comes to this.
But as soon as you see it happening, be willing to take a picture of those people.
Yes.
I mean, this is the problem. We are, and I know it. And somebody had told me that I took a picture of the person right away, and they started freaking out and running away. And that's what you need to take to the police. I think additionally, I really want to point out that this situation is not being reported on the news. The amount of people being taken, it's people. I've heard this. I've probably heard it 10 times in the last 2 weeks from adults. I mean, people from the age of 40 to 70 telling me, if it was that frequent, if what you're saying is true, it would be on the news every day. Can you please explain, Gina, why this isn't happening?
Sure. Well, because I think we have this idea that people are just being snatched up off the streets, and it's more subtle than that. They are being taken, but they're being taken in a way of, it starts out with that slow grooming process, and it's also.
Well, I guess I'm referring to the mall, the babies being taken
the babies,
situation.
yes.
They get at the hotline, they get about 10 calls a week at that Polaris hotline telling that they almost had their kids snatched, or they did, or the police had to take some, but it's not on the news.
It's not on the news. And I don't know, I can't speak to why things, because a lot of times I know law enforcement and the news media is like, there can't be a lot of stuff, said about things, even just trafficking cases in general. Like, there's stuff that happened years ago, but it's still ongoing investigation. So I'm not even allowed to talk about it and say, well, I remember when we had this case and this happened and these, people were involved. So if it's not being reported, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not happening. It's this, that I'm sure there's probably that stopgap and that sandbag there, of we can't put everything out there. But I can tell listeners that yes, human trafficking is real. It happens. It happens here in the United States. It happens domestically. And again, if you go to Polaris, you can see where your state ranks on a grading scale as far as how much trafficking takes place there and what your state is doing to combat that. Or if you're an A state, then that means that you got it. You're doing the thing.
Ohio,
and you're getting
Florida.
it taken done. If you're a B state, then you're working on things. But if you're a C, D, E, F state, F states aren't even acknowledging it. So Polaris will really help you see where you fit and fall within that. And then it can also point you into some really good myths versus, truths when it does come to trafficking as well.
And of course, we'll put that information in the description so they can click on it and get right to it if they want to.
Absolutely.
At least they can educate themselves. That's really kind of what I think this episode is for, is to take that person that may not know everything and educate themselves. And that website is going to be a great website.
Yes.
Another thing that I want to make sure that we touch base on is the fact that, to kind of go back to the movie, it did have a happy ending for that
Yes.
family,
Yeah.
for that family that they focused on for that story. And there was other reports that there was simultaneously things happening at the exact same time in real life that the movie depicts. So that was the movie was, and I encourage everybody to go see the movie because it is worth the gut punch. It is worth it.
It's a big gut
It
punch.
is worth it. I will take that. I would suggest everybody take that gut punch. Go ahead and get socked in the gut for the topic, but also know that, okay, when you leave the theater, you're feeling good because, oh, they found the boy, they found the girl. This is good. So with that being said, and to wrap this up, can you, with our listeners may be overwhelmed with oh my God, the world's falling, the sky's falling, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and be overwhelmed with the enormity of the human traffic problem now that we've even spit out numbers, right?
Right.
Can you share a success story that you're allowed to share? And maybe we can end it on a say, okay, because of people like Gina and because of podcasts like this, getting the word out and telling people to go educate themselves, that there is a glimmer of hope. Because if we spread this and get people knowledgeable, and maybe they hear a success story, they won't feel so overwhelmed that they're like, okay, I want my success story. Because if everybody has one success story, there's a lot more people in the world. If everybody in the world has one success story, we could combat this.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And I know, like, when I walked out of the movie too, I was like, that's great. And then I also went to, but what kind of therapy did that family get afterwards? Like, I immediately went to that too. Like, what kind of therapy? But there was in Louisiana, we had been in down, in a really rough part of town, and continued to mow this person's lawn, and knew he was running girls out of it, knew he was running drugs out of it, but would show up, take his girls to the doctor, mow the lawn, bring them food and stuff. And probably 6 months of just investing in that, because the thing is it's like you meet sometimes, again, it's living in wisdom, and it's just knowing, like, you can't always go in and bust everything down and just uproot these people. And so it was 6 months of just like working this contact of, like, you're running these girls, we know what you're doing, like, this is what's going on.
And knowing the whole time.
Knowing the whole time, but also knowing that a lot of them didn't want to leave because they didn't identify, because they felt like their needs were being met there. So we literally were just being Jesus, and the only way that we knew to be Jesus to them. And he did one Sunday, whenever we showed up to bring food and to see if anybody needs to go to the hospital, at the emergency room, had a sign that said, no drugs, no girls, gone to church. And like, that was without, he showed up at our dream center, like right there, like down the street from him. Like, he went to our church's dream center, and from that day on, he's like, I'm not running girls anymore. It was because of that 6-month investment into, we're going to mow, we're going to bring you food, how can we help, what can we do? And in talking to these girls, and then he started, telling them they need to go to church. And so being able to actually see them come into that environment and to begin to get freedom and to begin to get healing there and that way. And then here it was, a girl had been at a sorority party. She had been roofied. She had been gang raped. It had been videotaped, right? And recorded, and was told, if you don't show up at certain times to do what we're asking you to do, then this video footage is going to be leaked. That's another way that trafficking happens. It's that blackmail and that coercion. And finally, she had heard on campus one of the anti-trafficking student groups that we had, and was like, wait a minute, I didn't even realize that this was happening. And so she actually professed, this is what's happening to me. She disclosed to a school counselor, who at that time was able to get her immediately into contact with our group. And she was able to start counseling. Counseling was a beast, and it was brutal, and it was hard, because she had to admit all the things that had happened to her. And she also carried a lot of shame, saying it was her fault. She should have never gone. She should have never taken a drink. She should have never done X, Y, and Z, to which you have to reply, you can do all the wrong things, but it still is not deserving of being raped or trafficked or violated. You know, they
Girls go to
chose
sorority parties every day and have a
those
drink and
they
don't
chose to
get raped.
right.
Yeah.
They chose to do that. But seeing her after a year and a half of the therapy and the trauma counseling be able to actually thrive and to share her story is incredible. And then the final one, which I would love for you guys, you can even link this into your show notes. Her name is Catherine Gibbons. We call her Kat. I met her at a speaking event. We were on a panel together. She is the founder of Elisha Rising, and actually was just featured in Time magazine. She was a traffic victim, and she now has a nonprofit to help traffic victims, and she is responsible for changing a lot of the laws here in the state of Texas in regards to the provision that traffic victims are getting.
Oh, wow.
I will send you her information. Her story is incredible. I had the wonderful privilege of being able to interview and write about her story as well several years ago after we met, and we've just stayed in touch. And so she is an incredible success story. So they are out there. They are out there. It is a long road back from them. And I think the listeners need to understand that just because a traffic victim is found and they get help does not mean that they are going to be completely free within a week. We got to get out. Got to get out of television mentality. This is not a 30-minute, hour-long.
Oh,
Yay,
yeah.
everybody's good.
Oh,
this is a
that
process.
person's been saved for 3 years. They're still smoking. Let's throw them out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, you don't know what their life has been. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what's going on. And you're right. I mean, there is that it's been 30 minutes. We're supposed to wrap up the show. This kid should be healed, happy, and living free.
Yeah.
That's not
what it is. And that's why we need people in the lanes of trauma counseling and, find the lanes of psychiatric care and, physical care. Like it really, truly takes a village when it comes to these survivors. I don't want to call them victims. They are survivors.
You mentioned the guy going to church with his girls and getting out of trafficking because of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much, it's a better alternative than mine of just walk up and shoot him. But we talked about that once. I'm like, why are they leaving these hotel rooms with those men and arresting them when they could just go, I don't know. I mean, they rushed us. We had to shoot him. Oops. I mean, that's sad. They keep dying. I mean, they can't go to court. Well, that's rough. But you had a moment where it was bothering you, and you were walking out, and it was bothering you that
it was bothering me, and you can get easily burned out in those moments too, where you're like, why? Like this guy just got arrested, slap on the wrist, and he's back out a week later, and she's still dealing with the trauma, and she went back. And it was with this guy that said, no girls, no drugs. I've gone to church, where I was like, that's great, but there's still this justice side of us that we want to see justice served, which is a good reason that we're not Jesus and we're not the Lord. But
that's true.
It was,
he still has to pay for his consequences.
He does,
just like we talked about with our forgiveness episode.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, but there was that moment where I was like, I just don't even understand. And God said, God literally he dropped into me. He said, who are you to tell me that they don't get a road to Damascus experience? And I was like, well, I don't even know what that means. And he was like, Saul killed my people, and I still showed up on the road to Damascus for him. So why are these people any worse? He's like, they're not out murdering Christians. I'm like, but you know what they're doing to your children? And he's like, again, who are you to tell me they don't get a road to Damascus? And so it flipped that switch in me. I don't condone at all anything that they're doing, but also truly made me look at them and say, you know what, Lord, my heart is for the victims, but I also know that you can redeem anybody. And who am I to say your forgiveness is just for this group of people, but not for this group of people?
Just for us that do what we call little sins. Yeah.
Right. And we're all worthy of road to Damascus. Jesus died for us to have a road to Damascus. And so it changed my outlook, and it also changed my outreach and how I even approached victims in this of, I want to see them on this road to Damascus, and through like God still created them. The worst, most vile human being in the world, God created them and he died for them. And a lot of times I think we think, oh, the Lord died for us Christians. But yeah, but we weren't Christians. Like we weren't Christians when he died for us, you know, we're Christians because he did die for us.
He
And
died for us
so,
when we were sinners.
yeah, so that was a pivotal moment for that road to Damascus.
And
That I
we're
just call
all
it that
still
road to
sinners.
Damascus.
Every
Yeah,
single day it says you must renew yourself in the Lord.
yeah.
And Gina, you've known me for, I don't know, 480 years. I'm probably going to sin tomorrow by noon. And who knows? God, I could probably trip someone in a parking lot and go, oh, that was an accident. And God's like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah,
But I mean,
it really
the point
wasn't.
is the road, for people watching who don't know what the road to Damascus is, it's when Paul, who was a soldier and made laws to kill Christians, he was a major soldier. He wasn't just a little guy. He was in charge of many people. And God showed up to him on the road and said, blinded him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Blinded him. I mean, immediately with a bright light, fully blinded him and said, why are you killing my people? Didn't say, hey, you know, are you doing okay right now? Can we have a talk? Do you want to sit and you want some water? No, he just yelled, why are you killing my people? And then for 3 days, he said, sit there and don't move. Blind. And he sat there for 3 days, didn't know it was going to be 3 days. So and then he ended up giving, you know, say, okay, God, I'll work for you. I didn't know. I actually thought I was working for you. I thought these people were the bad people, but I'm sorry. And then Paul went on and led a great ministry and still suffered consequences for his actions by having to live under the same laws that he made and suffer for it. And he was tortured on several occasions. And I'm telling people this so you understand what that analogy means.
Mm-hmm.
I think it needs to be brought out very clearly
Right.
because it's major. We all need that moment. And I told Gina probably 7 times, Kyle, and I sat in the theater and I'm like, just walk in and shoot him. I do love to say that a lot. I think anyone who knows me, I'm like, let's just kill him. But the reality is we don't have that right.
Right.
If God said to me tomorrow, you can kill anyone you want, I have a list, alphabetical order, I can give it to you, but we're not allowed to. I know. We're not allowed to. And yeah, if people are watching and are like, oh, please, is that the only reason you're not doing that? I mean, yeah, I mean, my friends, Debbie, Kyle, we went to high school with, she goes, I know you'd never kill anyone. She goes, but if you were on the news and they said there were 10 dead pedophiles in a room, I'd be like, yeah, Jer, she did it. It was her. The reality is we all have to recognize that it's not that easy. And this is a terrible, disgusting thing. And these people are disgusting and they're horrible. And no, not everyone takes those moments like that guy. Not everyone is even scathed by it. They're like, whatever, you can keep giving me free stuff, I'm going to keep selling the girls. And so I think what you did, and I think you are going to I think there's a lot there for you for that. I mean, well, you know, I love you regardless if you've done none of this. Yeah, I love you too. But I've always been very proud of you, and for many reasons. I mean, the person you are is why you do this, but I love you and I'm so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
I know.
So it's an honor to do it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Could go ahead, Kyle.
Well, you know, it's an honor to have you and to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you through Tiffany, and it's an honor to have you on our show and to highlight this. And like I said, any of the information that we talked about this, if you want to know that information, we'll put as much of what we talked about in the show notes that we discussed was clickable. I did my show notes here. I even said, put up the link about how to watch your kids' Instagram account. Like that's going to be a link somehow. I don't know, maybe an article, maybe a video, but that's going to be down there. So if any of these little small nuggets that you gave, I'm going to try to do as much as I can to get that in that.
And give your kids a reason to trust you.
Yes.
Kyle's kids and my kid, obviously they could be lying to us every day. We don't know. I don't know, but they've always come to us with stuff.
sometimes like, whoa, dude, really? I didn't want to know that.
God.
Like it was
Yeah.
like nothing that major, but I'm like, I know we told you that you could come and tell us anything.
Yeah.
That probably should have kept close to your chest.
Because
And
we should be the safest people in their
Yes.
lives. Like
Yes.
we
Yeah.
need to be the safest people in their lives.
Yep.
And I will tell parents this just real quick. If you find out that your kiddo is chatting with somebody on Instagram or Snapchat, or they're sending pictures of themselves where they are not fully clothed, they're sexting or whatever, do not freak out on them. You gotta walk away. You gotta take a big deep breath, and then you've got to come to them and just as calmly as you can. You have to let them know, like, I'm heartbroken because you are more valuable than these pictures and then what's being said to you. Number one, and number two, this is not safe. And I know we could do like a whole nother show.
We
on
could do a
all
whole
of
episode
that.
on it, yeah. But you're right.
But
they need to feel safe. You are their
yeah.
safe place. Yeah.
Yes. So be the
Not
safe
their
place for your
punishment.
kiddos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a new take. I know, even talking to my dad about that when my son was a teenager, I'm like, no, he's my safe place. And I told my ex-husband that on many occasions. He's like, why are you being so nice about this with him? Because we're the safe place.
Right.
And it works out because then they come to you, like Kyle says, and tell you things that you're like, oh, wow, yeah. I'm so glad you're telling me. And absolutely. And then you walk away and you're like, oh my God. my
What did
friend
I just hear?
my friend told me that one day she's like, my daughter comes up to me and goes, Mom, I want to go get on the pill. I'm not having sex with him yet, but I know in the next year I will. And she said it was everything she could do to just go, okay, you're 17, you're old enough to make that decision. And this is what I wanted, was for you to come to me. And then she said, I walked away and was just like, my God, like what? It's a lot to digest. And you're just like, you can't yell.
Yeah.
You
And
can't yell. You can't
if
scream.
we just, what we've done a lot, because our kids are older, 23, 19, 16, and 13, what we've done a lot and what we've said more than ever is like, I'm going to need a minute, or I'm going to need an hour, or I need 24 hours to process this. That has been our biggest thing, is like, I need to process this. You're going to have to give me 24 hours and then I'll come back and we'll discuss it.
I like that. Yeah. Because if they feel that you are going to combat them, they won't come to you again.
Right.
Yeah. Love you. All right, Kyle, go ahead. You can say your final goodbye, everybody. But I mean, this is so important to cover these issues. It is. And I love what she said, that you have to mention that. You have to be their safe place.
You have to be their safe place. You have to have that open line of communication. If that's one thing that, if you're afraid of your child right now, that would be the best thing to do, is have the discussion with them. Like, it's going to be a hard one. Of course, you're not going to talk to a 5-year-old about this. I mean, other than say, "Hey, stranger danger."
Yeah.
But when it comes to the older kids that are starting to understand things, especially the females, because they get it a lot sooner than the boys do. They get the understanding of the world, I believe. Just be open with them. I mean, the stuff that I see, and then my wife sees in her profession, we've always been honest with our kids. Did it help? I hope so. I've never not told my kids about what I do, what I see, what I come across, on a daily basis when I'm doing my paramedic stuff. But I don't get to details. I don't violate HIPAA, but I just say, hey, these are the things that are going on in the world. You need to be aware of that. And I'm going to communicate that with you because I want you to communicate with me when it's time that you may need to communicate with me, to the point where I truly feel that they have taken those liberties in the past for good reasons, to help their friends, so that I could go and help their friends and figure things out for people or themselves. And I'm not done parenting yet. That's another thing they think. They think, well, now that I'm 18, you don't need to parent me anymore. Hello, sorry, mom and dad of me, they still parent me, right? Like my in-laws and my father. My mom's been gone for a few years, but she still parents me from above.
Right.
But I'm sure she does.
We all get parented throughout our whole life, and it's hard for a teenager in early 20s to wrap their head around that, because they have not had kids yet. And once they do, they'll get that.
They'll understand.
With that being said, let's wrap this up. This has been the Elite Few podcast with our special guest, Gina here, who deals with the human trafficking epidemic in her state. If you feel like you can do something, like she said earlier, do anything, even if it's just talk to your kids about this stuff. But we just want to wrap this up, tell you to share this with your friends, press the like, subscribe, forward this to people that if this discussion comes up, because it's kind of a hot topic now,
Yeah.
if this was helpful for you, go ahead and share this podcast with them, with your friends that may not understand if the subject does come up. Don't be afraid to talk about it. That's part of what the movie's message was we need to bring this out and let everybody know this is happening, and that there are people like Gina that are trying to make a difference. And you may be a person that can make a difference. Let's have you come and help. So other than that, thanks a lot, Gina. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys.
I love you. I love you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye. And that's a wrap for this powerful episode of the Elite Few, where FEW stands for Fabulous Extraordinary World, and the everyday people making a difference like Gina in the lives of others, to help them move the needle of their own success. Huge thanks to our host Tiffany Feeney and our expert guest Gina Bohl for her valuable insights in the dark world of human trafficking. Please do whatever you can to spread this message. Awareness is power, and we can make a difference just by sharing this message with anyone you know so they can get educated on the problem. Remember to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. Your support, of course, keeps us going. From all of us here at the Elite Few, I'm Kyle Goodnight. We thank you and look forward to catching you on the next episode.